So my mother and I have a tradition of traveling every year for Thanksgiving away from our families for a couple reasons, but including the fact that our birthdays, both hers and mine, always fall during the week of Thanksgiving. So we've developed a new ritual of taking an annual trip somewhere, just the two of us. We're a very small nuclear family, my mom and I. We usually try to escape the cold, but this year she really wanted to see the Northern Lights. And so earlier this week, I found myself in Alta, Norway, which advertises itself as the northernmost city in the world above the Arctic Circle. And we were hunting for the Northern Lights. And our guides, they use the word hunting very deliberately because it requires a mixture of luck and of patience and of tolerance for discomfort. The weather has to be cooperative. You need to let your eyes adjust to the darkness, which takes a good like 30, 40 minutes standing outside in the snow away from light and warmth. But then you see the faint glow of the Northern Lights in the sky above you, and it's a truly magnificent experience, made even more awe-inspiring that what we're actually witnessing is solar storms, right, hurtling across our solar system, colliding with the magnetic field that protects our planet, tumbling over the poles to jostle with the molecules of the upper atmosphere. It's a celestial cosmic rain of greens and reds. And I'll say my phone actually was surprisingly good at capturing the Northern Lights. This is not an advertisement for iPhones, but I was impressed. But it's really impossible to translate the awe that I felt in that moment through a photo. It's one of those you kind of have to see it to believe it. In her book, Help, Thanks, Wow, the theologian Anne Lamott talks about the three essential prayers that every single person, regardless of religious or a-religious identification, does by instinct. These are kind of like inborn impulses in humans. The first is the cry for help. When we feel stuck, when we're facing an impossible situation, we need that extra little push to help us get through something difficult. The second is gratitude, that feeling that comes to us when something amazing happens, or even when we expected the worst, but somehow, despite the odds, we're actually okay. We made it through. And the third is awe, the wow that we experience standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, or holding a child, a newborn for the first time, or hearing Cynthia Erivo hit every note in Defying Gravity, or looking up to see the Northern Lights. Through both collective and individual experience, I think we know the benefits of asking for help when needed. No one can go through this life alone. And a lot of ink has been spilled, and our tradition is actually very insistent on the need for gratitude as a life-giving and life-sustaining practice. But I want to talk about the necessity of awe, which of these three modalities that Lamott proposed may seem like an indulgence. It's the icing on the cake of life. Because as we look around at the world, as we doom scroll through social media and read the daily headlines, the overwhelming feeling that I encounter in the world is cynicism, if not despair. Increasingly, the world feels like an ugly and desperate and broken place. So when we open the Torah this week, as I talked about earlier, we read about Jacob, right, the third of our patriarchs, the one who wrestles with God and prevails, who is given and gives us the name Israel, who will father, along with our matriarchs, Leah and Rachel and Bilhah and Zilpah, the 12 tribes of our people. But the opening verses of our parashah, of our Torah portion, is decades before any of that will occur. I think when reading these stories, it's important to suspend our knowledge of what happens at the end to truly get into the head and heart space of these characters. The Jacob we encounter in these opening verses is in dire straits. He's just deceived his father. He's stolen the birthright from his older brother. He's fleeing for his life through an untamed and inhospitable wilderness. He's heading to a place he's never been, to find refuge among people he's never met. And I can only imagine how desperate he must have felt in that moment, how helpless, how despairing. And so, as the sun begins to set and darkness obscures the unfamiliar landscape around him, exhausted and bereft and scared, Jacob comes to a place and collapses. He takes a rock for his pillow. Clearly, he is very tired, and he lays down to rest. And then he dreams. Jacob dreams of a ladder stretching between heaven and earth, and on this ladder, divine messengers ascending and descending, and suddenly he finds himself in the very presence of God, who says, Ani Adonai, Elohei Abraham Avicha v'Yitzchak, I am Adonai, the God of your forefathers, Abraham and Isaac. The land that you are standing on will be given to you and your offspring. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, spreading in every direction, west and east, north and south. Other people will bless themselves by your name. And remember that I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go and bring you back to this land. Lo e'ezavcha, I will not leave you. And then Jacob wakes up. And he looks around at the sand and the stones and the shrubs, what was formerly a landscape of despair, and exclaims, Achain, Yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh va'ani lo yadati. Surely God is in this place and I didn't know. Jacob is filled with awe. How amazing, how wonderful is this setting. This must be a dwelling place of the divine, a gateway to heaven. And so he takes the stone that had served as his pillow and he stands it upright. He anoints it with oil and names the place Beit El, the house of God. So in a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, awe is defined as the emotional response to perceptually vast stimuli that transcend our current frames of reference. Or said another way, awe is the feeling that we get when we encounter something that is bigger, deeper, more profound than what we've previously experienced. And the scale can be physical. Be a soaring mountain, a vast canyon, the distant horizon of a boundless sea, but it also can be emotional, the wellspring of joy that rises within you when you fall in love, or the mind-bending experience of learning something that challenges everything that you thought you knew about the world, or in Jacob's case, finding yourself face to face with the creator of all things. I imagine we've all had our moments of awe, the times that we couldn't help but say, wow, at the world around us. And if we're lucky, over the course of our lives, we'll collect quite a few of these moments and these memories. I think seeing the Northern Lights is definitely one of mine. We remember these moments not just because they're special or unique, but because they have a profound impact on how we understand ourselves and by extension, the perception of existence itself. There is a science to how awe shapes us. Yang Bai, a researcher at UC Berkeley, helped author a study that looked at the function awe plays in tempering our sense of self-importance, creating what they call a small self perspective. Awe helps you stop focusing so much on yourself, she explains, and to look more to what's around you, toward other people in the world at large. Jacob leaves his encounter with God comforted and encouraged, but also humbled. If you think back to the blessing that I just read earlier, God doesn't bless him with greatness, right? God blesses him with the promise that his descendants will be like dust. My friend, Rabbi Zohar Atkins, pointed me to a commentary by Sephorno, a 16th century rabbi and scholar, who writes regarding this blessing that after you have been humbled by like the dust of the earth, then you shall spread out in all directions. And the spreading out here, I don't think is simply physical, that Jacob's descendants should find ourselves in every corner of the earth, but perceptual, right? That he's able to adopt a wider lens, a godlike scale of time and space, a small self perspective. I was also reminded of the wisdom of Rabbi Simcha Bunim of Peshischa. I never get that one right. Peshischa. Any Yiddishists in the room can correct me afterwards. Rabbi Simcha Bunim says that we should have two pockets. Two pockets, and in one, a note that says, "For my sake, the world was created," and in the other, "I am but dust and ashes." Awe reminds us of our smallness, but not in a way that leads us to despair, but helps us understand the impossible miracle of our existence and its place within the cosmic dance of the universe. Going back to that study out of UC Berkeley, the researchers found that a small self perspective increases pro-social behavior. After an experience of awe, we are more likely to look to others for help. We are curious about their experience and perspective. We tend to act from a place of abundance rather than view others through the suspicion of scarcity. We are nicer, more patient, and less selfish. Another study out of Stanford and the University of Minnesota found that people who experience awe feel like they have more time, a perception that has become increasingly rare in our busy, highly accessible, productivity-driven world. Awe has the ability to alter the subjective experience of time, the researchers found. Experiences of awe bring people into the present moment, they write. And being in the present moment underlies awe's capacity to adjust time perception, influence decisions, and make life feel more satisfying than it would have otherwise. Awe also breaks us out of our usual thought patterns. It exposes us to new possibilities, to the world as it could be, rather than simply seeing the world that is in front of us, the world as it is. In that way, awe induces hope, that there's more to life than what we've been given in this moment. Jacob wakes up from his dream with a new sense of purpose. He still doesn't know what tomorrow might bring, and that is still scary. But he has the courage and the vision to face whatever may come his way. Like Jacob, we find ourselves in the wilderness. I don't need to list the many tragedies of this moment to remind us of the inhospitable landscape that we are traversing right now. Our inboxes, our social media threads, they remind us of that every single day. Looking to the road ahead, we will need to ask each other for help. We will need to find space for gratitude, for blessings big and small. But I think we also need to cultivate awe to help us keep perspective on what is in our power. For we are but dust and ashes, but also the power that we have. For our sake, the world was created. Great, so how do we create opportunities for awe? Like, the big moments are nice, right? The big moments are nice, and you should seek them out as you're able to. But we also need to develop a habit of cultivating what the psychologist Dacher Keltner calls small wonders. He writes, "Don't think you have to travel to exotic locales or learn the finer points of classical music to find awe." He says, do pause and look for moments of awe in the everyday and help our young people notice them as well. When you go for a walk, notice the large and the small, the canopy of trees, as well as the individual flowers and blades of grass. If you're building a music playlist, he says, add songs that make you feel connected to the larger world. Begin conversations with open-ended questions that point to mysteries rather than answers. And he concludes that feeling awe is an antidote to our high-stakes, stressed-out, highly competitive times. In another interview with Inc. magazine, Keltner lists 8 opportunities for awe, what he calls the 8 wonders of life. And they are moral beauty, or what Mr. Rogers might call looking for the helpers, collective movement, whether a yoga class or a rave, nature, music, visual design, big ideas, encounters with life and death, and spirituality. And so looking at this list, I couldn't help but think of what we're doing here today on Shabbat. Right? Shabbat is a spiritual technology that creates space in our lives for experiencing these small wonders, to be present with each other, to move together, to go outside, to sing, to contemplate beauty, to wrestle with our tradition and these strange and difficult texts that we've inherited, to celebrate new life, to name new babies, but also to remember those who are no longer with us. And of course, to encounter the divine, however you might define it, whatever name that you might give it. Now, I'm not saying that you need to practice Shabbat in any particular way, but as we look down this long road ahead of us, I want you to consider how you might bring a bit of this ancient spiritual technology into your weekly rhythms. It can be as simple as sharing food with friends, or lighting candles with a loved one, or coming to services to sing, or if you're feeling bold, setting down your phone for an hour, or if you're feeling even bolder, maybe for an entire evening, or maybe you have the audacity to do it for an entire day. But to intentionally create space in your life for small wonders. Those big moments, they happen. They happen and they disrupt our lives in a way that is wonderful and magnificent and asks us to pay attention. But the small wonders are always there. They're always there if we create that space, because awe is not just something that lifts us in spirit, but it's something that will carry us through the months and the years ahead. Shabbat Shalom.